Okay, open to Q&A. The first one always, people feel a little bit shy, but so is there anybody that can go over the shyness threshold?
Thank you, Prof. Hausmann. I actually have a set of questions. I will take 2 or 3 important ones. The first one, the way that you have diagnosed the growth and current account relationship. In fact, I think it's much deeper than that. For most of the period in Sri Lanka, our growth was sustained through increased government spending and not that much through export growth. And for many other countries in the Asian region, particularly in Asia, East Asia, we have seen. And growth is associated more with improved current account performance and not with budget deficit or increased government spending. That is number one. And number two, when we look at the future growth and the current growth of Sri Lanka, of course, the growth, as you have categorically mentioned during the last few years, after 2009, after the end of the war, the growth increased to 8% and to 7% for a few years, 2-3 years. And that was, as you mentioned, it is not necessarily again with the improvement in export sector, but with the non-tradable sector expansion, particularly with reconstruction and construction activities, and also the government fiscal expansion. So that's why it was not sustainable, as you also mentioned. I am not sure if we are focusing or overplaying this technology issue. It's a stock of knowledge. So, of course, we improve technology, but it is a commodity so that we can buy it. And it's a commodity all around the world. So if you have resources, it is possible always to buy it. So
I'm making the point that you can't.
Yeah.
That you can buy tools and you can buy codes and patents, that you cannot buy know-how. You cannot buy know-how.
Yeah, knowledge.
But you cannot. Know-how resides in brains. And it moves with enormous difficulty from brain to brain. So
okay.
you can.
No, I have no disagreement with you, Professor. But I don't think anyway. Again, it's a long-term changing process. But I think you did not pay that much attention to, or maybe you have some more time to explain how do we achieve growth. It's a problem of investment, I think, because when we look at the long-term growth, it's an expansion of the productive capacity of the economy, and that is not. We cannot highlight the importance of technological change, forgetting the rest of the factors which improve the production, the productive capacity of the economy. My final point. By the way, I think you bought these Sri Lankan garments not by accident, and I think there's a purpose for that as well. Though you mentioned that Sri Lanka is competing with low-income countries, as far as our limited export commodities are concerned, I don't think so. Because Sri Lanka, in the case of garments, in the case of certain rubber products, ceramic products, and certain other manufactured items, I don't think Sri Lanka is competing with Bangladesh or Vietnam or Cambodia. And my final product, my final question about this jumping monkey theory. Because when you look at the recent growth and trade and growth processes that have been happening in East Asia and Asia to a certain extent, that is, I have seen the dominance of the network trade. That means countries are not going to have the total, the A to Z technology to produce the commodities from A to Z, but there is a vertical disintegration, and there's a greater degree of outsourcing happening so that one product is produced in many countries, and then all these parts and components are brought into one country, and then they are assembled there. So how do we, this is the dominant trade pattern that has been developing in East Asia. So how do we reconcile this jumping monkey theory and these network trade patterns happening in East Asia? Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I think that for most of your first part of the comment, I think we are fully in agreement. That is, you can grow the domestic market by stimulating internal demand through expansionary fiscal policies, and the economy will grow. Imports will grow more or less pari passu with the economy. And if exports do not accompany, you will widen your current account deficit, and the process will have to come to a stop. If exports cannot grow at the rate at which the rest of the economy can grow, then exports become the binding constraint. So that's where we come out in the diagnosis, and I think that what you said is, I think, consistent with that. Number two is, I think we slightly differ in the idea that knowledge is something you can buy. I'm going to argue that know-how is something that is very hard to move around. And I'm going to talk in my second part of the talk about migration, about diasporas, about FDI, about business travel, to see how know-how actually moves in the world. No market for know-how that they can simply tap on. Then you said that the problem of Sri Lanka is investment. I tend to view investment as happening when things are going to be profitable. And they're profitable if the know-how is there. So the fact that people have not found more areas in Sri Lanka profitable, and hence the reason why investment is not higher, may be perfectly compatible with my explanation, that there's a problem of expanding the know-how base of the country to make other industries more attractive, and consequently exposed, you're going to measure higher levels of investment. But people don't invest capital in the abstract. They invest capital in a particular line of business that you can profitably make in a place. So I think that the investment is sort of like a symptom or an outcome of the fundamental story I'm trying to take. And I think this network trade is also a very, very important element in the new global architecture, in that it used to be that people were trading words, that they were trading products, and products were like somewhat finished products like words. The world has moved more from trading words to trading syllables. This has made the process of getting into business easier, because you need fewer letters to make a syllable than the letters you need to make a word. So it's sort of like a stepping stone into more complex value chains. So you can start in garments, I mean, you can start in electronics or in automobile, in parts of the value chain, and over time complete that value chain in your country. That was not available before. So I think it's making the accessibility of these other industries easier. So it's not outside of my framework, but obviously, if your trade policy is such that participation in global value chains is not attractive because you have too many taxes to international trade, then you're sort of like regulating yourself out of those possibilities, and as a consequence, you are excluding yourself from learning about these other industries.
So, Professor, so your argument is that there is no investment because there is no know-how. Or, to my understanding, actually, it has to be the other way around. And know-how comes, it comes after investment. So the basic question that we have been having for years in this country is the lack of investment. And it has not moved up. It is not because we don't have know-how, because know-how also comes after that. As I said, investment is a short-term thing, and improvement in know-how, that's a long-term thing, which is coming together with investment. So that's what I thought. And I know the reason also for that and why it is not, why investors don't want to put money in this country, even after the war is over. It is not because that there is no know-how. There is something else lacking there. Thank you.
On that, I think there are people waiting to have the tea. So when we come back in part 2, we'll take up the answer to that.
Okay.
So we have had a lot of no-shows. So the ones who are sitting at the back can come and sit on these reserved seats.